Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Ingles Furman Radio Network preview of Saturday's Furman VMI matchup in Lexington, Virginia. Another Southern Conference get together. Paladins heading on the road again and looking to extend their road winning streak to 4 in a row, which would be the most consecutive wins on the road since they won 4 in a row back in 1999. And that win, the fourth of those, was in Chapel Hill against the University of North Carolina. I'm Dan Scott, voice of the Paladins. Good to have you with us. I'll be in Lexington, of course, with the radio crew. Tom Van Hoy is on assignment this week, so Marcus McMorris, David Cobb, and I will be bringing you the action from Lexington. And you'll notice the studio trappings are a little bit different. My wife is going through some stuff right now. Things are okay, but just some things that requiring me to do as much as I can from home at the moment. So that's why things look a little bit different. The mechanics of the recording program are also different, but we're going to do the best we can, try to get all the information out to you that we do on a weekly basis and set the stage for this matchup. Let's talk about the Paladins coming off of that 47-40 win over Western Carolina this past Saturday at Paladin Stadium, a game that Furman led by 24 entering the fourth quarter, had not allowed a fourth quarter point all season long, held the ball for 11 minutes out of 15 in that fourth quarter, and still found themselves stopping a Western Carolina pass to the 4-yard line on the final play of the game to hold on for that 47-40 victory. Talked with defensive coordinator Dwayne Vaughn, with head coach Clay Hendricks in conversations you'll hear during the Pepsi pregame show, which begins at noon this week. More about that in a minute. But talk to them about some of the issues that led to that, some mistakes that were made here and there, things that maybe you could have done differently. But the bottom line, and I thought Dwayne Vaughn was very forthcoming about this, when you've got somebody down like that, you got to put them away. You just simply have to finish the job. And the Paladins were able to hang on. And I asked both Dwayne and Coach Hendricks, what lessons do you hope that this team learned from that moving forward as we enter the final 4 games of the regular season? And to hear those answers, you'll have to listen to the Pepsi pregame. See, that's in the business, we call that a tease. I try to get you from here to there on Saturday. Bottom line, Paladins held on, got the win. Now 5-2 overall, 3-1 in the Southern Conference. And this could be a pretty significant week as far as beginning to see some shakeup in the SoCon standings. We'll talk about that coming up in just a bit. VMI, meanwhile, they are 1-5 overall, 0-3 in the league, and having all kinds of problems with injuries. More about that in just a moment. I want to talk, though, about Dominic Roberto and what this young man has done. Of course, 252 yards rushing on 25 carries against Western Carolina last week, which is the third most in school history for single game rushing numbers. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. In the last 2 weeks combined, he has 385 yards rushing, counting what he did against the Citadel. And when you look at what he's done against the Citadel and Western Carolina in each of the last 2 seasons, in 2 games against the Citadel, he has rushed for 265 yards, averaging 8.8 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. And in 2 games against Western Carolina, he has taken it to an even bigger level. 448 yards rushing, 9.1 yards per carry, and 6 touchdowns. So he loves seeing those 2 schools' defenses lining up across the way from his offensive line. By the way, last year he rushed for 100 yards against VMI as well. In fact, in his last 10 games, going back to last season, Dominic Roberto has rushed 172 times for 1,197 yards. That's 7 yards a carry and 12 touchdowns. Oh, by the way, he's also caught 7 passes for 60 yards in a score. And kind of out of nowhere, Dominic is on the cusp of entering the top 20 in career rushing yardage for the Paladins. He is right on the outside. In fact, he could get there and beyond this week. Leonardo McClarty ran for 1,712 yards between 1991 and 95. He is 20th all time on the Paladins career rushing list. Justin Hill just ahead of him at 1,741. Ernest Crosby, 1,775 at 18, and 17 is Antonio Wilcox, the current running backs coach, at 1,777 yards. Well, Dominic Roberto is sitting there with 1,679 yards. So if he goes over 100 yards against VMI on Saturday, he could go from outside the top 20 into sole possession of 17th place all time. It's been that kind of run for this young man. We mentioned the 252 yards last week against Western Carolina, third most in school history. He also has the number 11 single game mark against Samford last year when he rushed for 216 yards on 22 attempts. His 252 yards and 3 touchdowns against Western Carolina last Saturday, of course, earned him the FedEx National Player of the Week at the FCS level, and, of course, the Southern Conference Player of the Week as well offensively. Masachovka, by the way, was the Special Teams Player of the Week. He blocked 2 kicks against Western Carolina on Saturday. All right, so who is this VMI team? You know, they have given Furman fits in each of the last couple of seasons. Go back to the spring of 2021, lost a 14-13 game in Lexington, and then won 37-31 in a nail-biter at Paladin Stadium back in the fall of 2021 last year. It's a different team now for a myriad of reasons, starting with injuries at the quarterback position. Seth Morgan, their starter, is out. Colin Ironside, his backup, is out. Expected to start this week is true freshman Colin Shannon, who has only thrown 20 passes all season long. He has completed 15 of those for 158 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. His backup, another true freshman, Wyatt Hagan, who has thrown 2 passes. He's completed them both, one to his guys and one to the other guys. That's where they are at the quarterback position. Offensive line-wise, they came in with only one starter from that very good group they had a year ago. They've had some injuries there. It has been a very, very tough season for VMI so far under head coach Scott Wackenheim. And as we pull up some of the numbers, I think, here to do a little tale of the tape for you and give you, there we go, get a chance to look at the difference in some of the numbers. You can see Furman has an advantage in pretty much every category: scoring average, points allowed per game, rushing yardage, the passing yardage per game, pretty much dead even, total offense, time of possession, rushing defense, passing defense. VMI does have a 3-yard advantage there, but total defense, Furman with a big advantage. And then you get into the categories that oftentimes decide who wins ball games. And I'm talking about turnovers. Furman, even though it has turned the ball over, I think 10 times in the last 4 games or 9 times in the last 4 games, still +4 in the turnover margin. VMI is -11 in the turnover margin. They have had a heck of a time taking care of the football. And they also have one of the more astounding stats that I've seen in a long time. Defensively, they've been very good at forcing fumbles. They have forced 11 fumbles in their first 6 games. Problem is, they've only recovered 1 of those 6 fumbles, or of those 11 fumbles, I should say. It's as I said, is a pretty astounding stat when you think about it. You look at third down conversion rates, you look at opponents on third down and fourth down, you can see that Furman statistically overall has a pretty significant advantage across the board. And talking with Justin Roper, the offensive coordinator, about some things this week, and he said that their defensive coordinator who came in a year ago has changed up things just a little bit. He's not as aggressive gambling that he's going to put one-on-one coverage on the outside and bring as much pressure as he can. They're not playing that way this year. At least they haven't to this point. Now, we know that going back into the spring of 2021, they confounded Furman by showing them some looks they had never seen before because of some different circumstances there. But just looking at them on film, they're not quite as aggressive defensively. But Justin did tell me they do some things that are going to make Furman have to make plays on the perimeter in the passing game. And that's something they haven't really had to do in the last 2 weeks because they've been able to just line up, especially in the second half, hand the ball off and roll over both the Citadel and Western Carolina. So it'll be intriguing to see how it all works out this week in this matchup. The other thing that need to point out here, and it was announced in the press conference back on Tuesday, Jace Wilson has decided to redshirt. It was his decision. It was not the coach's decision. He has decided to redshirt, so he is not going to play the rest of this 2022 season, which means that the primary backup to Tyler Huff now is true freshman Carson Jones, the very highly thought of young man out of Maryville, Tennessee. As the season has gone on, he has been getting reps with the twos and even occasionally perhaps some reps with the ones. So it's not like they haven't been preparing him because the college football rule that changed a couple of years back. You can play 4 games and still redshirt, and the plan was to try to get Carson Jones some action in this season and still redshirt him if possible. Those plans now are going to be predicated on Tyler Huff remaining healthy for the remainder of the season because Carson Jones is the primary backup. But Tyler played very well against Western Carolina last week, only threw it 10 times, completed 7, 3 of those touchdowns, 2 to Ryan Miller. So he has played well. He has been a very, very pleasant surprise to some of us, to the coaches who brought him in and watched him work in the summer and then in the fall. It's not been a surprise. That's why he won the job. But now your primary backup, the number 2, is the true freshman who's yet to take a collegiate snap, Carson Jones. Let's take a look at, first of all, the league standings. We talked about the fact that this could be a week that you see some movement in the league. First of all, Mercer sitting there at 4-0 in the league and 6-1 overall. Chattanooga still undefeated at 3-0. Samford at 3-0. Then Furman at 3-1. And you've got a very clear line of demarcation between the top half and bottom half of the league. After Furman, nobody with more than 1 win, and this VMI squad still looking for its first Southern Conference win of the season. That's a look at the standings. Now we take a look at the upcoming schedule. And here is why I say that we have the opportunity to see some movement in the league this week and next. First of all, 2 of those undefeated teams, Mercer and Chattanooga, are playing each other. So one of them is going to get its first conference loss. You see that game, a 1:30 kickoff, along with Furman and VMI, Citadel and Western Carolina at 2. And then the other one, Samford and ETSU. Samford, of course, at 3-0 in the league, and ETSU 1-3 in George Quarles' first year there. A lot of folks are going to be paying attention to that 3:30 kickoff to see if ETSU can hand Samford its first loss in the league. So you think about this. If the Buccaneers can win that game, Samford will be 3-1. Furman would, with a win, be 4-1, and then either Chattanooga or Mercer is going to have 1 loss. So now all of a sudden you got a pretty significant logjam. And looking down the road, of course, Furman has Chattanooga next week at Paladin Stadium at 2:00. Samford is on the road at the Citadel, Mercer at VMI, and ETSU in Wofford. But the Paladins still have Chattanooga and Mercer to play. Samford still has Chattanooga and Mercer to play. So the next few weeks, we've got 4 weeks, really 5 because the Paladins have a bye week. But so 5 weeks, 4 play weeks for the Paladins remaining in the regular season. It is going to get really, really fun heading down the stretch here. And this is why you play the games, man. And knowing what you know at the FCS level, where you either win the conference and get the auto bid, or you have to put your fate in the hands of a group of people who go behind closed doors and call themselves a committee. All of these games mean so much as we get into late October and early and mid-November. It is going to be a fun stretch of football, and it all starts with Furman at VMI, a game the Paladins should win when you look at all the numbers and everything that we've just detailed, but you take nothing for granted. You take your foot off the gas at all. You saw what almost happened in the fourth quarter at home against Western Carolina last week. Dwayne Vaughn again telling me killer instinct. When you've got somebody down, you got to put them away. Let's see if the Paladins learn that lesson this week. The game will be broadcast on streaming on ESPN's family of networks. And if you want to watch it, if you're not going to Lexington, as always, please do. Just turn the sound down and sync up the radio broadcast from the Fan Upstate, our flagship station. We'll begin with the Pepsi countdown to kickoff at 12:30 at noon, straight up, I should say, and then the kickoff at 1:30. So we're looking forward to having you along with us. Hope that you can make the trip. The weather's actually supposed to be pretty nice for late October in Lexington, Virginia, there in the Shenandoah Valley. If not, we hope that you'll tune in and catch the radio broadcast. That will do it for this week's edition of the Ingles Furman Radio Network. Look forward to talking to you from Lexington on Saturday. Until then, as always, I'm Dan Scott saying God bless you and so long, everybody.